So thank you all for joining. I'm going to turn it over to Monica and Angelina now. Thank you both for coming.
Thank you for having us. Absolutely. This is something that we're really, we've been looking forward to. Angelina and I worked together for years and are still friends, and we enjoy riffing off of each other. So yeah, maybe we start with introduction. So Monica McDole-Russell. I am in the process of exiting Medtronic. At Medtronic, I was a senior director of regulatory affairs for the endoscopy business unit. So led the entire global enterprise for endoscopy in terms of regulatory. Prior to that, I was in the peripheral vascular business unit of Medtronic, and kind of just going back down the line, I've been a Terumo interventional at J&J, at Teleflex. So I'm really kind of a big company girl. That's where I grew up. But I also have experience with startups and small and medium-sized companies. So I've been in MedTech almost 20 years now. It's been an incredible ride. I hope to be here for many more years because I'm not done yet. And this is the type of thing I love to do now. I love to just share experience and share knowledge, and just any opportunity I get to do it, I love to. So thanks, Sean.
And I am Angelina Lisandrelli. I see some familiar faces on here. I'm glad to see you guys again. Like Monica said, her and I shared, actually worked under Monica's leadership several years ago. And, you know, she is a mentor to me. So I always looked up to and acknowledged how her leadership skills have shaped my leadership skills at Medtronic. Prior to that, I'll start from the beginning. I graduated as a chemistry major, went into a lab, started doing formulations for Dow Pharmaceuticals, then, you know, went from R&D to Medtronic. And I stayed at Medtronic for a majority of my career, at least 13 years. And I worked my way up from going into a GMP lab, developing analytical test methods, then kind of having a quality role, then getting into validations. And then someone's like, you got to head for regulatory. And I was like, okay, what is this? And that's how I went into regulatory. And ever since then, I love regulatory. But what developed out of there is a belief of helping grow people and telling kind of people that they have this potential inside of them. And so I did go into people management. When Monica and I met, I was an individual contributor, but when Monica left the PBH organization, you know, she had a role that was a people leader. And so no better person to go into people leadership under her guidance there. And I don't say this with lip service. I say this as someone who admires Monica and how she emulates good leadership inside the organization. From then on, I moved out of there into an individual contributor role, but it was not necessarily an individual contributor role here at Philips. It was the head of regulatory file reviews. So it was basically taking those learnings and then plopping myself into any business like a parachute and helping those that had never done submissions or looking at submissions and helping bring teams together without authority, which we'll touch on this later again, is probably harder to do than to be like with the title, right? And so after that, I am now currently the director of regulatory and quality because one business unit said, you know what, we really need you as a permanent fixture here. And that's where I'm at. I'm still at Philips, but it's called ResProtect Philips. That's a nutshell.
That's great. So the topic that we chose for today's discussion is team building, teams. And you know, I think that your combined experience, as well as the people on the call, this ought to be an interesting discussion. But like, where do we begin? What is a team? You know, like I mean, like, and you know, I'm we have this problem in medtech. What is a community? What is, and so, yeah, hit it.
So I would like to see if everybody's definition of a team is here on the chat. So type what your definition of a team is from your perspective. Is it with someone with a title? Is it an organization? What do you think is team? Monica, I'll let you go first and answer that, and then I can follow up.
Yeah, to me, a team is a group of people pulling toward a common goal. And that's a pretty basic definition, but that's what I consider it. Yeah.
I see the same thing. I always like to bring the EQ aspect to it. So yes, you're at a common goal, but you share a camaraderie, you share culture, and you share a philosophy that cohesively works together. Because if you do not have that, you can have the same goal. And how many of us have experienced reaching a goal, but there's dysfunction? Is that a team?
No.
Correct. So you have to kind of combine both. They have to have a defined goal. Yes, absolutely true. But do you have that collaborative cohesiveness that synergizes and meets that goal? And it doesn't have to be within, in my perspective, a person under a title, or even as you guys, majority of you are consultants, you're considered part of the team too. There has to be some sort of cohesiveness and philosophy that works in there. Ian, I cut you off there. What were you going to say?
No, I mean, my background over the past 10 years has been going into, as a consultant, has been going into companies of all different types and sizes and basically auditing their quality system, which should bring people together as a team, and finding the ins and outs of where their system is failing, how their people are adapting to it. And just when I step into a situation like that, I want to create a team. So that's my first goal, is to put people around the conference table and see and examine everybody's attitude towards what a team should really be. That's just my philosophy. Without the team, you're not going to accomplish a whole heck of a lot. Or if you are, it's going to be Kappa ridden, 483 ridden, you name it. So I like to go into a company and say, okay, I'm here as part of the team. Where do we start? That's my teacher aspect of being me.
Yeah, I think even, certainly you see it in big companies and probably to a certain extent smaller companies. When you are in one of those situations where you're trying to bring a team together, there are going to be different members of the team, right? Some have just joined, some have been there for a long time, and there's a lot of this going on. It wasn't me, it was them. And I did not make this mess. This was before my time, or a defensiveness of, this is the way we did it. It worked then, it works now. And so that's the complexity of a team, right? Especially in a large organization where people do move in and out, whether it's through businesses or just kind of moving to in and between companies. There are so many different personalities, and no one team. I think it's very rare for a team to stay static for any length of time. And so that's a big challenge, right? That I think you're touching on, Ian, is how do you get that cohesiveness in a team?
Right. Well, I mean, first of all, just the main factor of having management buy-in on the whole situation is key. Now, I've gone into companies where I've gone into people's training records, and upper management haven't been trained. So that's a whole other subject. But it is definitely management buy-in. It's the management team that's got to bring the team together. I'll be quiet now.
discussion now.
I see a comment from Alin. I actually have the book right next to me. Still relevant to this day. I think, oh, thank you, Sean, for putting that in there. But if you want to really break it down, I think at the end of the day, when I come and join a team, and even in that kind of thinking of the head of regulatory file reviews role that I had, it was almost like an internal consultant coming in. How do I show up on a team is really how the ripple effects of that team is going to perform. And I think everyone should have some sort of accountability, not just from a management perspective, but from how you're showing up in a team to help leverage the management's ability to turn the team.
Okay.
One of the harder things that, and I kind of like challenges. If you tell me there's a mountain, I'm like, great, I like it. I'm going to do it. Great, let's go. So what was one of the benefits is walking into teams cold and seeing if the same sort of tactics or fundamentals would work with the team. And the first thing and foremost is building that trust, right? So my question to you guys are, what are 3 successful ways that you have done to build trust on the team immediately, coming in cold? Because Ian, to your point, you can't be just pointing out things and saying, well, you don't have training, you turn into public enemy number 1 on a team, right? So how did people build trust with their teams? And let's see if you guys come to the same sort of aspects as what Monica and I experienced.
Somebody needs to mute. Thanks.
Yeah, so I would say like one thing that I anytime I work with people, especially if I'm bringing them into a project that I'm doing, is like hearing them out, allowing them to have ideas of without too much of what I'm thinking or what I have in my head, allowing them to speak it and then also to carry it out to some degree. So whether it's a good idea or if it's not a critical failure kind of thing, obviously say something. But if it's an idea that they have, let them carry it out and see how it plays out as them inputting into the team. Because people, and if you give them the chance to say reflect, we say let's reflect on this, see how it worked, whether it was good or bad, you gave them the trust. You said, I actually trust you. I believe that you can do something. And then usually they want to reciprocate, and then now you've created that exchange. That conversation is now initiated.
Absolutely. What else?
I really actually, just to break in for a second, for Amir, that what you said about listening is just so critical. It's so key, right? There, it said that there are 2 ways to listen, right? You listen to understand, or you listen to respond. And whenever you're a member of a team, I don't care if you're the associate or the senior director, you should always listen to understand, because listening to respond is basically not listening at all. It's okay, well, what am I going to say next after this person, after this person's mouth stops moving?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that just shows ego, which I think like takes you nowhere in a team, to be honest.
Yeah, no, very good. It's a good call out.
What else? How do you guys all, that was a wonderful example, Amir. What else can show trust on a team?
Jose?
Yeah, no, I know it's always helpful as a leader to think back to when you weren't in a leadership role. And one of the things I always appreciated was leadership really sharing the grand vision, sharing the overall goals, so that you don't feel like you're just doing like a small thing in a very pigeonholed area, but rather that you're part of a grander objective. So, now being on the leadership side, that's something I always try to do, is make sure the team understands, hey, here's where we're trying to be in the next 5 years, at the grand level, and here's our approach to it, here's our strategy. And then kind of at the micro level, for this project, here's what we're trying to do. So it's not just, if you're leading an engineer who's doing embedded software for a particular system, yeah, sure, you can just give them requirements and an architecture and say, go build this. But there's just going to be a different level of commitment and ownership if they understand the grand vision. And something that I saw in medical devices, one of our clients at some point, I saw they did this. It was a women's health company, and at board meetings, they would bring one of the patients who had benefited from the product. And then they would also do it at, like, kind of staff meetings on a fairly regular basis, just to kind of allow people to connect what are they doing on an everyday basis to the, ultimate outcome or impact. So yeah, just generally that sort of thing.
Leonard, do you have your hand raised?
I need to change that to Leo. I don't know why it keeps coming up with Leonard.
Oh, Leo, sorry.
You shame on you, Sean. So a lot of our projects, people come in late to the game. Always want to like rush. We're like ready to submit. We late for testing. We're having problems. So they're very reactive. So sort of writing on Jose's comment, knowing the grand scheme of where they're at, what they're trying to accomplish, what their sort of market scheme is, understanding that helps a lot. But then also explaining why certain requirements are there and how they interconnect with guidances and how the regulator is going to look at it. Trying to explain that helps them understand what are the more critical issues, what are the lower hanging fruit that you might be able to deal with later, and also looking at the bigger picture of design. Are you going to design just for the US, or are you looking at the grander scheme of around the world in certain markets? It's better to design all together versus piecemeal, because then you're redesigning over and over again, gets expensive and more time, etc. How do you want to approach it? We ask a lot of those questions during the process.
That's an interesting point, Leo. And one thing that I've heard over and over again, and Angelina and Monica, feel free to speak to this without naming names, but in larger organizations, the concept of silos and silos not communicating with one another, and there not being a consistent thread running through product development from early stage to commercialization. And so the grand vision that Jose spoke of, getting lost in the process to the minutia of each department and their individual things. And even Monica, you spoke of being in charge of different business units, and the different business units can function like completely different companies in in the largest of manufacturers. So I'd love to hear both of you speak to that vomit that I just did.
And you want to go first? I'll go after.
No, go ahead. I'm kind of gathering my thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that happens everywhere, right? But it definitely does happen. It happens a lot in big companies. I think silos are just sort of inevitability in some ways, right? People are focused on their function, on getting the work done, on getting the job done, on serving the patient. And so it's almost an organic outgrowth of that, on that singular focus on what they're doing. And I there was a great mention, Arlen mentioned balancing being a manager versus a leader. And so I think it's incumbent on leaders to help work across those silos, right? We'll probably never break them down, but if we at our level are able to work with our cross-functional partners, work those relationships, develop them, build that political capital, then it's going to make it much smoother when we have to move across and into those silos together. Whereas a manager, we're more boots on the ground, right? We have to be with the people, helping the people understand and executing the work. There is work to do in terms of moving silo to silo, but I have felt, as I've moved in my career from management to leadership, that if your leader doesn't help at the highest levels with the leaders of those other, siloed functions, managers can work as hard as they want, but it's got to start at the top. So I think that's one key thing, being manager versus a leader. So, Ange?
I think totally agree. I think where I have kind of took a hot knife to butter to silos is by when I meet with one part of the team or one kind of function, I try to share the information that they've shared with me openly. And one of the things that I do is that I do that consistently. So when people work with me, just to highlight on the trust, they can trust me for sharing information and breaking down silos. Sometimes I've been pulled into difficult teams to kind of not tell them directly that that's why I'm there, but more to show them how they can naturally create collaboration across that. I don't want to call them out and say you're talking in a silo, because what happens with people? They start closing down and they become almost like rock solid silo. And you're like, okay, I've just screwed this up. So the way you have to come into it is almost like, okay, let me overshare. Now, the other thing that will happen too is if you overshare too much to leadership, stakeholders up there, you become noise. And so that kind of middle management is very difficult to learn unless you hit every road or bump in the road to understand when do you need to break that silo from the top level. And one of the first things I like to do is actually have one-on-ones with the leadership and understand their communication style. When do they want to communicate and what stakes do they need to be aware of? So if you can bridge that, you're not only breaking silos laterally, you're breaking silos above. And then you can see the cohesiveness naturally, and to Monica's point, organically develop in a team. And this doesn't have to be a manager. It could be an individual contributor. It could be a consultant too, because consultants sometimes get pulled in meetings with leadership as well. So that's my 2 cents there.
Thank you. Paul, I believe you had something you wanted to add.
Yeah, I did. It was too much to type. So many years ago, I took over as I used to turn businesses around and took over the small 2022, giving you a size company that made spectrophotometers. And one thing that worked really well for me is a combination. The Native Americans have this thing of the talking stick. I literally brought in what people, the biggest problem they said the employees had was they were not heard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, and I walked in acknowledging I was the consultant. I was like, guys, I don't have the corporate wisdom. Let's have a conversation about reality from your perspective. And it was amazing. All the wonderful things I did to grow the business 60% came from the employees. Right? So one is listen. And then the other thing is trust the team. And what I did was I used my expertise to put up the guardrails because I had the business perspective, right, of what would work to shift the whole company. But they owned their space, and out of 22, 2 of them hated their jobs. And so I helped them get another job and hire and train the next person, moved people around. One of them said, hey, I'm in customer service. If you want, I can ask, in a sense, if they want fries from that. My point is fries with that. And we made customer service a profit center. I didn't come up with those really cool ideas. And I've done this in IT. I used to, right? I've worked with Stryker in the old days. We were running hyperbaric chambers when they first came out in 94, 95. Man, I tell you what, asking the question, how would you do this, and stepping back, and then as a leader or of a group or a team, however small or big, is then take the ownership for direction, but allow people to be heard. I just thought that was something that you don't see much and hear about much in teams. So
I just want to tack on to what you say. One of the key elements of building trust in a team, and especially from a high leadership standpoint, that I think many leaders at that top level, now granted they might be busy, is going down to the lower level the people who are on the ground and saying that I see you, I acknowledge you, and it's not just through the survey results, it's actually not even like giving a gift card or anything like that, just acknowledging their presence changes the momentum.
Yeah, totally.
And I've heard actually some regulatory leaders that have been in their roles for 2 years, and they're not at executive level, but they're almost like at the higher level senior director, that still have not connected one-on-one with everybody on their team. They're like, we've never had a meeting with them. And I'm like, why would I want to work for somebody like that? Why would I want to go the extra mile on a team like that? And I think that's key, Paul. What you're calling out there is a huge nugget that I don't know where it fits into the whole management, but to me, it's just being a good human and recognizing the work that people are doing under your leadership.
And I'd like to allude it really also what comes back, one is, it's socially, there's an emotional value of listening to the people feeling heard, right? But from a business standpoint, this conversation, triggered another memory. I was working with a company that did heart monitors, the IRV pacemaker, just checking the heart rate, sort of a medical device. New product launch, and new products always have problems. I went and sat with the guys that were in the warehouse. I was running the supply chain, getting the returns and unboxing the returns and looking at how things with the product made a huge difference. And then testing it on site with the product that was returned, and then bringing that feedback and their insight to the dev team and the owners of the product, of the product managers, was tremendously valuable. That was not in any SOP. To listen to the guy in the warehouse who's doing the testing and receiving the returns.
Yeah.
And there was no way to document his insight, his or hers, so the 3 people. So anyway, so that's that listening and then actually using that information and creating the metrics and the system and the processes. That's the leader's role, is how do you mine that data?
Well, now the word came up, relationship building is the key. And it shouldn't happen with your executive colleagues. You can schmooze all you want over there, but really, I think making yourself available to the people that are supporting the mission and the goals is fundamental. That's your foundation.
Well, key to that is just remembering that, you're not a leader unless you have a team. I mean, it doesn't matter what your title is, right? If you don't have people under you doing the work and serving the mission, you're just a bunch of hot air. So yeah, I mean, to the points, Angelina and Paul have been making, it's critical that the leader leads. The point is not to be in the big chair, and as Angelina was saying, schmoozing. Although valuable relationships are built, I have to say, Angelina, at the executive level. But no, it's getting down to know the team. And that's why, no matter how large my team has been, I've always made a point of having one-on-ones with each one of them at least once a year, depending on the team. And if it's a smaller team, then more often than that, because that means so much, right? When I was an individual contributor, I never had one-on-ones with my senior director or my vice president. It just didn't happen, right? No company that I worked for. So for me to sit down and give each person 30 minutes and say, what is your experience here? How are you doing? How are you feeling? And it's critical. It's critical, and it's pivotal to the team. I think it really helps. So definitely relationships matter. I think Arlen is not on anymore, but he had made a great point about psychological safety, which I think is, it's in danger of becoming a buzzword, but it's very, very vitally important, particularly when you're looking at the workforce that we have now, which is intergenerational, it's diverse in all the ways, right? In terms of race and sexual orientation and education level and age and all of these, religion and all of these things that could really help bring out critical contributions. Everybody has their own worldview, everybody has their own unique contribution. And if we invite people to share who they truly are, rather than say, you must be a Medtronic minion or a Philips minion, or, you must be stamped out of this mold. If we welcome in the uniqueness of every individual and make it safe for them to be who they are, that's huge, right? I have been in teams where there was no psychological safety at any level, and nobody wants to stay there. Nobody wants to be there. We spend so much time at work. If you don't feel safe, you're not going to give 100% of yourself to anything. So I love that Carolyn brought that up. Sorry we couldn't address it while I was here.
So I've had an interesting experience. I worked for 27 years at various size companies, from Elsevier being the largest to startup. And I have managed teams from 0 people under me to 12 people under me, as a VP of marketing, chief marketing officer, various different functions. And since I don't work at any of those places anymore, and I'm not naming names, I'm more free to talk than perhaps some others on the call. And what I'm able to say is that, in my experience, many of the managers that considered themselves good managers were the worst. Um, and the ones that knew that they had room to grow as managers, the ones that understood that nobody does this perfectly, that there is no formula for managing people that is going to carry across the board, those were the people that were more honest, open, and accessible than perhaps the people that just assumed that because they had the corner office that they were good at their job. And those were some of the worst. And what I saw as a consistent flaw among them was that they went straight to discipline, and firing oftentimes. What I saw on a lot of the smaller companies was a revolving door on sales. They would say, "Oh, we're going to go out and bring in this rainmaker." And then the rainmaker never materialized, right? There's no such thing. And they would get disappointed and they would give up. What they didn't know was that their onboarding was insufficient, their training was insufficient, their ability to empower the person to make decisions was insufficient. And so, to the point that I think somebody else made, ask the people that work there, they know where the friction points are. But they didn't ask my opinion. They would just scream louder at the person and be like, you're not meeting quota, like something like that, you know. And so, I mean, to me, it's like, now owning my own business, managing my own team, I see very clearly that I am the rate limiting factor in my own company almost all of the time, right? I am the bottleneck. I am the problem, right? And it allows me a perspective on the companies that I worked for to see just how much the personality of the team leader can interfere with the growth of the team. And so that's my experience. I just wanted to add that.
I think you're completely accurate, right? It's the tone at the top. And it goes all the way from the CEO of the company all the way down to through the managers, right? And you can change and flex things a little bit within a company culture, but Yeah, it is. It's generally the leaders who wind up setting the tone and maintaining the tone and setting the culture. And, I think there have been just a ton of great comments about, really, really perceptive things, finding the connectors within a team, and listening and, leading with intention. And these are all key things that we all need to keep in mind, no matter what role we have and no matter how many people we lead, to your point, Sean. So
I got a question, because you, Monica and Angelina, you're the wise ones on deck today. You opted in, right? So there are a lot of consultants here. Any guidance for us? Because I've been in this position, so as good as that, I grew the company 60%. I got fired on my way to a meeting. They didn't even let me come in. They said, you don't need to come in anymore, right? Do you have any advice, guidance for us consultants, a lot of consultants here, on how to come into a hostile situation where we're asked to work with the team, but the team doesn't like the assigned project because of all the bad blood before? Any guidance on that? And it just could be stories, but I got to bounce in a few minutes, but I wanted to just ask that question.
Yeah, I mean, I would love for Angelina to pipe in here. I can tell you, I started my medical device career as a consultant, helping a company through a consent decree. So I came in with 30 consultants, literally. It was a herd of consultants. And we were just pointing out right and left what everybody was doing wrong. And the teams hated us. Of course they hated us.
Sure.
Because we're telling them their baby was ugly, essentially. And telling them, we have to fix this and we have to fix that and all that sort of thing. And what I quickly learned, and it's something that has stuck with me throughout my career in medical device, is we are on the same team.
Right.
And the first reaction is going to be, yeah, well, you get paid a hell of a lot more than I do. But we are not here as a consultant, right? I am not here to tell you how wrong and bad and whatever you are. I am here to share the information that I have, the knowledge that I have, and to help you fix the problem. It's not, there's no blame. There should never be, naming somebody, shaming anybody, no departments, just we have a problem to fix. And my number one goal is helping you fix that problem. How can I do that best for you? It's always, making it about them, rather than, hey, look at me, I'm a consultant and I'm going to tell you how badly you screwed up and I'm going to charge you for it. So that's my recommendation. But
I agree with that. Yeah, I resonate with that. I think I've had an R&D person yell at me on a call saying, you're coming in and ruining everything. Because the RAS on the call, they had never done a 510K. This was mandated by the FDA to do, and they were steamrolling her. And when I come onto calls, I'm very quiet. I'm listening because I want to understand, one, who are the connectors, who are the disruptors. I start reading the room. Now, the disruptors, I take notes and go, okay, why are they upset? What this disruptor was upset about is I had requested that every R&D report goes through regulatory for review. What had happened historically is that R&D reports never went through regulatory. They were just submitted blindly before. And so that's a risk to do from a regulatory standpoint because you don't know if the results are failing such. So when this came up that all reports will go through regulatory, this was the comment, and this man was yelling on the call. I don't match that energy when people are yelling. Earlier in my career, can I say that I did? Absolutely. Later in my career, I talk a lot quieter. And the quieter I get, it calms the room that's already hostile. I want them at the level that I want. And two, I'm able to clearly communicate what I need from him. And so what happened was that we were all going to review the reports. And I said to him, are you ready to sign that you will not have regulatory review and that I'm able to share this with upper leadership? And I said this in the core team call because he had broken psychological safety with everyone. And so I had to bring some sort of psychological safety back and go, from a regulatory standpoint, you're always judging risk. From a consultant standpoint, you're judging risk. How can I bring a solution? Okay, if you don't want that and you want that's the solution, this is the risk. High risk, let's escalate to leadership and know where it stands. It's clear, transparent, and accountability is already built. He changed his mind. So regulatory got to review all the reports. And this person who had never done a 510K in her career, brand new, young 20-year-old, had no AI letter, no interactive questions on the submission because she was able to perform and do her job correctly. You are going to deal with different personalities all the time. You have to match your energy at where you want them to be. You cannot come in at full fire. And that's where I'm very focused on EQ here, because we are very technically sound across our respective functions. That is never a question. And when people get agitated, they feel personally attacked. And I want to know that I see them and that I don't want them to feel that way. And so that's key, is can you measure somebody's EQ there too and provide solutions and provide what that risk looks like? Transparency.
Thank you. Yep, makes sense.
There's an interesting question from Julia. What is your experience as consultants and being accepted by teams? I'm going to go ahead and say that when I go into a company with with a full-fledged marketing department, I always say they don't want me in their house. You know, they do not want another marketer in their house. They resent me being there. And the way that I handled that is to let them know that I am there to provide them with additional bandwidth, that I am there to do what they don't want to do, that I am there to assist them in getting to the next level, and that I'm leaving and that I don't want their job. And I think it's really important as a consultant to let people know, I don't want your job. I had your job for many years, and that's the reason why I'm a consultant now. I don't want it, you know?
Thank you.
I think to tack on to what you're saying there too, I work with contract manufacturers. Let's just say it's just a bigger consultant, right? What I try to do from large manufacturer to any consultant is kind of give insights that help them grow in their career. So one recommendation as consultants, you guys have ability to see so many different types of medical devices, many types of QMSs. So bring different solutions that are easily accepted into large manufacturers. And I will guarantee teams will start taking these, I don't want to call them breadcrumbs, but they're almost a little bit amuse-bouches that make people more welcoming, inviting into a team, to the point where Sean is like, yeah, I'm just here for a short period of time, but let me give you something that is going to be worth your while. Not just a deliverable here, but something as a professional development that you can bring to the team.
I love that you said amuse-bouche. Thank you.
It's just the taste. It's not the whole cake.
Excellent, excellent point. There was a question in the Q&A. No, I guess it went and it was answered. How often do you recommend to have one-on-one with direct manager?
With a direct manager, you should have a one-on-one every week, as far as I'm concerned. That's what I always do with my direct reports. It helps keep everyone aligned to the same goal, especially in these times, which are turbulent, which are changing in every company, right? I have friends who work in all the major companies, medical device companies, and they're all seeing the same thing: budgetary limitations, upheaval, changes in leadership, reorganization of departments. And so it's key to keep your direct reports in really close alignment with you, so that you're all, saying the same thing, singing from the same hymn sheet, as they say. And because otherwise you can drift. There can be a little bit of drift even in a week off course if something critical happens. So whether it's 30 minutes, whether it's 45 minutes, with direct reports, I meet every week. I make that a priority.
So you touched on something really interesting to me in that you're talking about the amount of change that's happening in the world right now, both within corporations, outside corporations, and with the larger issue of digital transformation, the introduction of AI, and the nature of people's jobs changing and or being eliminated altogether, particularly with things that are being replaced by automation or digitalization. What are you seeing at the highest level with regard to the shifts within organizations toward we can just get AI to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of panic around that. Some of it is justified and some of it isn't. I think everyone, just glancing at everyone on this call, I don't think that we'll see a complete AI takeover in our career lifetimes. I can't speak to what'll happen in the future, but at the level I am and my friends in other companies, we're looking for AI as an aid, right? And frankly, I think there's more risk to people from things like offshoring, like moving jobs from the United States to other countries that are more affordable from a budgetary perspective. But that's kind of been going on for a long time. I mean, in IT, if you look at IT, they've been offshoring forever and ever and ever. And now I think the pendulum is just swinging to medical device, where people are saying, oh, wait a minute, we could have this done for half the cost. So I'm seeing more of offshoring being like a risk than AI right now, at least across the companies, the 4 major companies that I have contacts in. That's AI is only a helpmeet for us. We are looking for the advantages of AI helping, not replacing at this point. I think it'll come, but not yet. So, Angelina, what have you seen? I don't know, at companies you've worked at.
Yeah, I was actually on a panel last week with Distiller SR about a tool that they have that they use to help with literature searches, and it is so impressive. And the medical writing team that does the CERs for MDR submissions, I mean, it really takes the edge off on their work. And again, burnout is the key here, where AI can really help with companies. I think larger companies have to balance the act of lowering their bottom line, to Monica's point, offshoring to different things like places like India, Costa Rica. We've seen this shift. But how can they prevent the talent that they have from leaving a company? And the way is bringing in kind of tools like that from Distiller SR, where they can help with the literature review, help with streamlining that process and taking the edge off of doing 20 CERs in the next 6 months is super valuable. Again, to Monica's point, it's not going to replace people. It's just going to take the edge off of their work right now. I don't think AI, for what we understand AI is sophisticated enough to replace a person yet. you can see that, there's hallucinations, there's things. It takes a lot of money. I was watching NVIDIA earlier this week about things that they're doing, and they're saying, oh, we're here. I want to see it. I really want to see it because I don't think we're there yet. There's too many hiccups with AI.
Yes. So we are nearing the end of the hour. If you have questions or would like to reach out to Angelina or Monica directly, I encourage you to do so. And I just wanted to put in a plug for next week. I put it in the chat. Elvio Grimignano is going to be speaking next week on digital marketing for OEMs and contract manufacturing organizations.